Hello, and welcome to this episode of Ctrl Innovate Chats. I'm joined by Craig Cheshire of TD Synnex, who is the Cloud Sales General Manager looking after the Microsoft ecosystem and the Microsoft stack. We are just off the back of Microsoft Ignite 2025 in San Francisco. And as always, there's been plenty of updates. So we're just going to spend some time talking through some of the major updates, some of the key changes across Microsoft and what that means for you. So yeah, let's get cracking. The first question I've got for you, Craig, is really for a very straightforward one. What is Microsoft Ignite for the audience?
Yeah. So Microsoft Ignite is their headline event where they get together in San Francisco for a number of keynote speeches. They take you through with partners that they work with. They take you through with end users that they work with, and just everything that's going on in Microsoft basically, and give you a top to bottom rundown of what they've been innovating this year.
Yeah, and it's I think every year gets bigger and bigger and better and better. But this year it was pretty full on. From your
Yeah.
perspective, what were the most important and emerging themes from the event?
I mean, it was packed with announcements. There's a few standouts that I think can be generally described as game changers. It's going to change how IT teams plan, buy, and deploy technology next year. There was major announcements to help understand how AI tools and Microsoft 365 Copilot to Microsoft Foundry and beyond, really. Agent 365 was a big announcement that would probably go through that in a little bit in a while. There's new agentic control planes. There's Work IQ. That would take your data and turn it into AI-based intelligence. There was so much to talk about. It's trying to boil it all down into a quick chat is a fun one to try and do.
We might be here for a while then.
Yeah, it could be.
I think a good place to start is with Copilot and AI, and obviously Copilot as a general theme, because obviously there's
Yeah,
probably many different variations of Copilot, but that's where everyone's kind of eyes were throughout the event. What's new
yeah.
in Copilot for Microsoft 365 specifically, security or Azure, that actually helps IT teams do their jobs better day to day?
Yeah. So, no one was expecting Copilot not to be spoken about, right? It's the headline now. It's where everything's being pointed towards, and what we're seeing more of now is new Copilots in different product sets, right? So, probably the first thing that we want to cover is the fact that there's model diversity now. So, with the addition of Anthropic and Sora 2 for AI video generation, it gives us more flexibility to match the right model to the job now. So we're getting more data sets in there in how these co-pilots are operating, which is great.
Did you see, you've kind of watched many of the updates and things, but did you see anything there that makes adoption easier? Things like licensing changes, deployment tooling, any integrations that help with that?
Yeah, probably covering a bit more later on. Loads on licensing changing in terms of a lot more flavors, a lot more ways for partners to adopt Copilot now and start using it. Integration tools, especially when you look across Azure, and how they've got an auto migrate tool now and things like that to help you index your licensing and your data and put it across in a lot more of an easy way. So, especially if you're going into a hybrid environment, loads of help there now.
Yeah, it feels like it wasn't that long ago that they just made M365 Copilot available for all businesses. And now in what, less than a year or just over a year, sorry, it's been a huge monumental shift, and now it's everywhere, and they're making it available for not just enterprise level businesses, but small to medium sized businesses as well.
Yeah, exactly that. So, you've got agent mode now, which works within Word, Excel, and PowerPoint, and it lets users like iteratively, easy for me to say, work alongside AIs. You know, um, before where you would necessarily have the tool function in there. Now it sits across those, and it takes the data from one app to another now. Whereas before it felt quite siloed, didn't it? If you were using one of them, you might use it in there. It wouldn't necessarily have the memory to come with you into the next app. So, and that's part of what Work IQ is as well. All these agents are within the Microsoft grid. So now it's getting them to talk to each other and pass that understanding and context across your different apps as you move through them and work through them. So meetings, chats, think of Copilot as kind of like situational awareness now across those apps.
Yeah, it's as a Copilot user, I'm quite excited, or M365 Copilot user, I'm quite excited about some of the efficiencies I'm going to be able to implement in my day-to-day job. Whereas before it was great, but it was very much app by app. But now it's just going to be all coming together. I just think the possibilities are endless. Shifting into so away from the kind of modern work ecosystem, but into the kind of Azure and the infrastructure. This was where I think it was Copilot was being talked about, but no one really knew what the possibilities were, and no one really knew what was going to happen within the Azure infrastructure side of things. But that was my biggest takeaway from what's exciting that's been announced. What jumped out to you as the kind of singles biggest from that side thing in the Azure?
I've got a few really for Azure. So it's really interested in this space where it's starting to land and expand now. So you've got Azure Copilot for Cloud Ops. So it's an agentic automation for your cloud optimization. Has a look at your cost optimization, performance, without manual intervention, on a dashboard for you to go and view without having to run a ton of reports and look into it. The AI scale infrastructure. So what Microsoft are doing now is they're advancing compute, network, storage, application, data services with Microsoft Azure Cobalt, Azure Boost Systems, Azure Kubernetes services, AKS they call that as well. Then you've got Azure Horizon DB, you've got, and that's for PostgreSQL. So, they integrate with Linux, Kubernetes, and they're a lot more open source now. So it couldn't be simpler, really, for you to integrate into Azure and work with a ton of different systems, and manage across different frameworks and security frameworks, basically. So, just makes it a lot easier for people to get involved in cloud compute.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's certainly exciting. And you mentioned security there. And again, that was at the start of Copilot, 1 to 2 years ago. They did announce, Copilot security was a thing, but I feel like there was only a certain amount of businesses who were able to invest in that side of Copilot, because it was typically quite expensive and it was still very much in beta mode. But now that's changed, and there was a lot of focus on the security Copilot side of things. What's the security update from Ignite, and that you think could genuinely change how people start to protect their estate and their IT?
I think the biggest news out of security from Microsoft Ignite was that Security Copilot is now included at no additional cost for all Microsoft 365 E5 tenants. So it's integrated with Entra and Sentinel and comes ready to use agents that automate security responses and streamline reporting as part of your E5 licensing tenants. So I think that is huge. Those E5 licenses have always bolstered your security ability, but that is just like massive, I think. Opens it right up to people. They also introduced predictive shielding in Defender. So that leverages AI to proactively secure attack paths before they're breached. And it's just quite an important shift into that automation of risk anticipation in security strategies. For a lot of smaller businesses, it's hard to have a full security team, a full tech team, and everyone pointed at it. So actually, if you can introduce a tool to your workflow that helps with that and mitigates these risks before they happen, I think that's going to be huge for partners.
Yeah, so you've kind of answered my next question, which was around kind of a lot of people typically don't see Microsoft as a security player, but they might have some of this licensing stuff. So for those companies who do already have the E5 licensing, what should they be turning to, or what should they be testing off the back of this instead of just reading some of the updates?
Well, it takes a bit of configuration, right? Because especially because, like you said, because people don't always associate Microsoft with being a security partner, even though they've got some of the most comprehensive product out there. They might have other solutions in place. They might have a load of plugins going on. So what you need to look at is what this licensing gives you the access to versus what you're already running. And then that way you can do a like-for-like compare, see how you might have to then go and do some config in your Azure estate to switch this stuff on. But there's absolutely a ton of benefit from keeping it all in one house there.
Absolutely. You touched on this earlier at the start. There was a lot of licensing and commercial changes announced. Again, all
Yeah.
really exciting stuff and all positive stuff for end user businesses ultimately, because it's going to help them adopt this technology where typically they couldn't do this beforehand. But from your perspective, what were in the announcements? What are the kind of top licensing changes that you think are going to impact, Curve's customers, for example?
I think there's two really big ones to concentrate on. The first one being that volume discounts are being retired. So from the end of this month, basically, Microsoft is removing enterprise agreement, quite often referred to as EA, tiered pricing for online services, right? So historically, EA customers have benefited from level B, C, or D pricing based on seat volume. Those tiers are all being retired. So all customers now are going to shift to level A pricing regardless of their size. So for large enterprises that previously enjoyed quite deep discounts, they could see a swing of 10 to 12% increases on their cost. So if you think about that across your whole estate, that's going to be quite a big shock come renewal time, right? There's a couple of reasons Microsoft are doing it to simplify their commercial models. EAs have been in line next to CSP for a long time now. And actually, while they have to keep concentrating on one, does it detract from the other? So if they can simplify it, push people towards a more CSP model of trading, then we should just be able to go all in on that side and start streamlining those licensing products as well. I think customers really need to be aware of that. If you're still running anything on EA, budget planning becomes critical, especially for organizations with thousands of seats. And procurement teams need to be up to speed with the different licensing models, because that could be a bit of a shock come renewal time.
Absolutely. I think what was your second one?
The second one, sorry, was about 365 Copilot for Business. Good news is Copilot licensing should be getting more simple, not more complicated. There's now going to be a dedicated SMB offering for Copilot. It's at a more accessible price point, launching in December. So we'll have more information on it then. But it's designed for businesses that don't need the full enterprise stack within their Copilot licensing, and the complexity that brings. For me, it really signals Microsoft's intent to make AI mainstream and make sure that all segments have access to it, not just the large enterprises that are normally adopting this thing, early.
Yeah, no, that was you took the words out of my mouth. I think that was my biggest takeaway from the licensing commercial changes side of things, was the new Copilot for small to medium sized businesses SKU. I think it was
Yeah.
I can't remember the exact price, but I think I read somewhere it was going to be around half of what it is at the moment for, and again, slightly less of the functionality, but all the stuff that's needed for businesses adopting Copilot.
I've got $21 in my head, but
Something like that.
Dollars. Yeah. By the time it all converts and comes through, we'll see.
Yeah, but certainly a better price point to start adopting Copilot for those businesses.
Yeah.
And to kind of wrap this up then, if obviously you work for TD Synnex, but if you were an IT, you're an ops leader, what should you do next? off the back of Ignite? All these great updates. What would you do next?
This, I've got a couple of practical bits of advice, but actually there's one thing to mention is there's a ton of content on Microsoft's YouTube channel. They've got an events YouTube channel. I've caught up with a few more of the sessions off the back of that. So if there's anything you really wanted to drill into specifically, take a visit to that page and have a look. But there's three main things I would do as an organization to start preparing. I'd review my licensing and my licensing estate, and I'd start road mapping any changes that I want to make now in anticipation of renewal season. I'd start preparing for a Copilot rollout by focusing on my data readiness, my governance, and user training to maximize the investment I'm going to put in on those Copilot licenses, right? So what I mean by data readiness is making sure files can't be accessed by people that shouldn't be accessing it. They're segmented and labeled correctly. Your governance is in place to make sure that it's in line with your GDPR and things like that. And then, that user training is just the prompting, how you can use it, the best way to make the most out of Copilot, because it's not just a question engine. It does, if you use it conversationally and you work with it, you get a lot. We've got people with licenses in our business that we have conversations and they go, I haven't even thought to use it like that, and things like that. So, you've really got to test the boundaries of it, of what you can do with it. And then the last bit for me is audit your Azure estate. We didn't quite touch on it actually when we spoke about Azure, but they've got a new dashboard that makes it visible on, we kind of touched on the cost savings a little bit, but it gives you usage data, it tells you how to make performance gains and things like that. So actually using that new dashboard will really help you to optimize your Azure estate. And then, that's my three key points. I think my final bit would be just lean into that Microsoft ecosystem, right? They design it that way for a reason, so that, you can lean into it. Microsoft would love you to never leave it, right? So we've got end-to-end security in there. There's automation. There's AI features. So it's kind of got bits of everything you need already. So I'd lean into it. And if you're spreading your estate over loads of different licensing types, I'd see where you can streamline and make it easy to manage.
I appreciate that, Craig. I thank you for the updates. I look forward to doing this again in 12 months' time, 2020. I think it's in San Fran again in 2026.
Yeah,
they've announced.
Maybe we'll both have to try and get there and then do a live one.
Hopefully, that would be the dream. That'd be great. But I mean, it's some of the change in 12 months, probably from Ignite 2024 to Ignite 2025. That change in 1 year is beyond comprehension. God knows what is going to be being announced in 2026 with some of the agentic AI stuff and where we're with that. So yeah, it's certainly going to be exciting.
Super exciting. You're right. I mean, 2024 Copilot was just getting started in earnest. They'd announced it the year before. It was really starting to get underway. And now you look at all the differences that they've put in there, that, Copilot Studio, and they've got a whole dashboard to review all the different Copilots that your organization's built. They've got grouping on there so that you can see if people are creating the same types of assistants and things like that, and what technology they're using, what third parties are plugging into it. Just the data coming at us now from it is more and more, and it's amazing what they're stepping up and doing with it.
Absolutely. We'll leave it there. Plenty of updates. Thanks for chatting, and I look forward to chatting again soon.
Thanks for having me.